Spoilers for Hollow Knight Silksong and the Alien franchise, and trigger warnings for sexual assault, pregnancy, and abortion. Yes, you read the title correctly, and no, this is not clickbait. Anyone who has made it into Act 2 of Hollow Knight Silksong is all too familiar with the Greyroot quest, and the subsequently uncomfortable quest to follow it. Many players have expressed that this questline has disturbing content and implications, and many feel as though it is a jarring departure from the normal affairs one gets up to within the Kingdom of Farloom. However, I would like to argue that this questline is key in exploring what I believe to be the key theme within Silksong's narrative. Silksong is about a lot of things. It's a game about faith, the oppression of the lower class via religion, indoctrination, ascent, collaboration, and memory. Above all these themes, however, is one that permeates throughout all of Silksong's story: characters, mechanics, and world building. That being femininity. More specifically, Silksong is about the relationship between mothers and their daughters. Throughout the game, Silksong utilizes its core characters and enemies to explore every facet of motherhood. The main conflict of the game is between Grandmother Silk and her daughters, both the Weavers and Lace, who were created by their mother to serve a specific function, ultimately leading to a cycle of abuse. The Kingdom of Farloom and its religious doctrine were born from this cycle, the Weavers usurping the role of their mother while perpetuating the system she set in place onto lesser bugs. Chakra's narrative revolves around her searching to find her mentor, a woman who, despite not being related by blood, acts as Chakra's maternal figure, touted by Chakra as her master true, but a mother just as much, more by far than the bug who bore her. Our main protagonist, Hornet, has not just one, but three mothers, each of whom imparted their own wisdom and guidance upon her, allowing her to grow into the fierce protector that she is in the present day. Hera gave up her own life in order to birth a child, and in the brief moments she could spend with Hornet, she made sure to tell her daughter that she should follow her own desires, rather than try to fulfill any purpose or destiny bequeathed to her by others such as the Weavers or the Pale King. Hive Queen Vespa teaches Hornet to fend for herself, to fight in this harsh world that seeks to destroy her, to keep her independence and survive. The last of her mothers, White Lady, apologizes for bringing Hornet into such an unforgiving world in order to create a better tomorrow, but in raising her has given Hornet strength enough that she may live to see a world better than her own, or to craft a world as she desires. The three mothers all wished to see Hornet thrive, and nurtured her in a way that would guarantee her a better life, one she can claim for herself with her own inner strength. With all these examples, it's clear that Silksong is a game about motherhood, so it only makes sense that in order to fully explore this theme, the game must delve into some of the harsher, more uncomfortable aspects of the concept. Case in point, the Greyroot questline, one that explores the horrors of rape, unwanted pregnancy, and abortion. Today, I will walk you all through this questline and analyze its allegorical nature as a metaphor for sexual assault, the burden of pregnancy, the demonization of women's reproductive rights, and ultimately come to a conclusion as to what Silksong ultimately has to say on the topic of abortion. Deep within the putrid heart of Vile Water's maggot-infested caverns, a small room is nestled, hidden within its chambers. In what is arguably Silksong's most unforgiving area, one might expect to find a secret boss, a deadly trap, some important NPC, or perhaps even a bountiful treasure to reward Hornet for her perilous journey. Instead, you find a passage overgrown with roots, twisted and gnarled into what can only be described and interpreted as a crib. Not only does one come to this conclusion based upon its shape, reminiscent of a cradle with a baby blanket of moss hanging out of it, but also due to the sound echoing throughout the chamber, the wailing of an abandoned infant. Sitting within this crib is a living creature, a parasite that once picked up will lead Hornet down a difficult path. This is the Twisted Bud. It cries incessantly like a newborn baby. The only way to soothe the creature is to play the needle in while it sits in its crib, quieting its cries with the soft lullaby melody of the needle in song. But even then, once Hornet runs out of silk and the song pauses, The bud once again resumes its tears with no other means of consoling it. Once you pick up the bud, it remains in your inventory with no means of getting rid of it, once again cooing and crying like a newborn infant anytime one opens the menu. Even when you're not directly looking at it, it makes its presence known. This twisted bud is clearly a baby, its title as a bud alluding to it as a newborn, a sprout among the roots. The bud also resembles a human fetus, with its beady black eyes, bulging forehead, and mess of cords connected to its body. Even the game files back this claim, referring to the twisted bud as a mandrake, a rooted plant within folklore whose childlike wails would kill anyone who heard it, and in some German myths, growing from the discarded bodily fluids, such as semen, of criminals. If a player wishes to shed themselves of this crying baby stuck within their menu, one is likely to bring the fetal bud to Shellwood in order to pass it along to the mysterious Greyroot. If you had encountered Greyroot within the first act of Silksong, you are likely to have done her quest, the Rite of the Polyp, in which you collect polyp hearts for her to use in some strange upcoming ritual she refers to as the Time of Birth. At first, I believe this quest was irrelevant to this discussion, merely a means to obtain the polyp pouch item and to lure the player into a false sense of security. But this quest acts as a prelude to the horrors ahead, and alludes to Greyroot's role as a sexual predator. While spelt differently, the term polyp is very similar to the word polyp. Polyps are small, abnormal growths of tissue within the body that can cause major health complications if not treated. One of the most common forms they take are endometrial polyps, polyps which grow within the uterus and are experienced by an average of 10% of the world's female population. So what Greyroot wants us to collect are tangentially connected to the idea of masses that grow within a person's womb. Surely just a coincidence. Shockingly, the method to obtain these polyp hearts is quite literally through the process of deflowering, Hornet repeatedly penetrating the flowers with her needle until they rupture and spit out the gooey heart inside. And for those of you saying this is a huge leap in logic, the flowers literally go from being erect to going flaccid once they expel the polyp hearts. Team Cherry isn't even being subtle. To put one final nail in the coffin, when viewed in the inventory, the polyps are described as a flower core that secretes a sticky sap. Greyroot asks the player to collect a sticky substance to use to achieve the rite of birth. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see the implications. But if you were like me and couldn't see the writing on the wall, you took the twisted bud to Greyroot in hopes of getting rid of the little parasite and checking off another questline. Greyroot prompts Hornet to hand over the bud and aid her in the rite of rebirth, with little to no explanation. Should Hornet accept? There is no nice way of putting it. In this scene, Hornet is sexually assaulted and forcibly has the twisted bud, a fetus, implanted into her body. While Greyroot technically gets Hornet's permission to perform the rite, Hornet has no idea what her role is within it. It is only after she is forced to accept that Hornet asks what she is to do, but by then, she is forcibly impregnated without an answer. Greyroot seizes Hornet's body in order to perform the rite, denying Hornet her bodily autonomy in favor of achieving the rite of birth through any violent means necessary. She knowingly forces Hornet into this position, knowing she will be burdened as the child's host, unwillingly made to carry a parasite that will grow within her shell and slowly drain her. The horror of this scene is, frankly, unlike anything else encountered within the game. No music, no ability to fight back, no input allowing her to run away. Hornet is simply grabbed and overtaken by this predator, who twists and contorts her, prying open her shell and inseminating her before cutting to black. The imagery of rape, specifically the process of having one's body violated, leading to one being forced to carry a living entity that uses your body to nourish itself, while not commonly explored within media due to the taboo surrounding discussing sexual assault, is found in more series than just Silksong. Ridley Scott's Alien franchise uses the imagery surrounding rape and pregnancy as the foundation for its horror. The Alien series explores the life cycle of the xenomorph, an alien species with a particularly invasive form of reproduction that serves as the main conflict within each of the films. The xenomorphs begin as small creatures called facehuggers, which, as the name implies, attach themselves to the face of a suitable host in order to begin the cycle of reproduction. They violently latch onto their victims, rendering them unconscious as they invade their host's mouth and inserting a penis-like appendage to orally inseminate them. The facehugger impregnates their unwilling incubator with an embryo that gestates inside them. Eventually, after absorbing the nutrients it needs from its host and growing enough, the newly developed chestburster bursts forth, tearing itself out of the victim's chest, a violent birth that kills whatever grew inside. This chestburster is an adolescent precursor to the true adult form, the xenomorph. The xenomorph was designed by artist H.R. Giger, using sexual imagery alongside his biomechanical flair to craft the monster. In the documentary Alien Evolution, critic Ximena Gallardo describes the xenomorph as a nightmare vision of sex and death. It subdues and opens the male body to make it pregnant, then it explodes it in birth. In its adult form, the alien strikes its victims with a rigid phallic tongue that breaks through skin and bone. More than a phallus, however, the retractable tongue has its own set of snapping metallic teeth that connects it to the castrating vagina dentata. The film's horror comes from its depictions of alien insemination as a metaphor for pregnancy as the result of a rape, using body horror and sexual imagery in order to depict the disgusting reality and heinousness of having one's own body violated by another. Its creatures fill the role of children conceived through rape in this scenario, an unwanted creature that grows within you, violating and potentially destroying your body in the process. Some of the special xenomorph forms even carry this illusion further by having names that allude to babies and motherhood, such as the newborn or the offspring, the latter of which is specifically born of a pregnant woman who injected herself with a serum that mutates her unborn fetus into something truly horrific. Both Silksong and the Alien franchise allude to rape within their stories as an ultimate violation of the body, depicting the horrors of forceful sexual assault in pregnancy, and by blurring the lines between parasite and fetus. Because when one is forced to carry a child that they did not wish to conceive, it's hard not to view that which is non-consensually growing inside you as anything other than defiling. When Hornet awakens, the detrimental effects of the parasite now residing within her become apparent immediately. Throughout the game, Hornet can equip several crests, which she can freely interchange in order to change up her playstyle and moveset. Within the game's lore, Hornet describes the crests as that signifier of a bug's essence and their invisible yoke born throughout a lifetime. In other words, the crests are a representation of a bug's identity and self-autonomy. The Twisted Bud, however, overrides Hornet's crests, unable to be unequipped and removing her ability to swap her crests entirely. The fetus growing within her is so draining that it overrides Hornet's identity, much in the same way that real-life pregnancy causes one to have to permanently change their life, forced to cater to the baby's needs for the benefit of its health and development, prioritizing them over your own. This idea of pregnancy overtaking one's life and freedom is further established through the crest's inability to equip tools or silk skills. These abilities shape a player's experience with the game, and in turn shape Hornet in both moveset and identity. By stripping Hornet of her tools and silk skills, the Cursed Crest, as it's called, strips Hornet of that which makes her strong and unique, limiting her freedom to choose who she is. Furthermore, while the Cursed Crest is firmly equipped, Hornet can no longer heal herself, as the parasite nourishes itself on the silk used to bind, quite literally draining the life force from her body in order to sustain itself. Even Hornet's stance has changed, with her notably more ragged and exhausted while idling, doubling over in pain as if on one mask shard regardless of her total health pool. This pregnancy is a strain on Hornet's body, and it is clear that should it remain untreated, it will surely kill her. Farloom's residents have a reaction to Hornet's affliction, and will comment on her pregnancy and weakened state with varying degrees of compassion and dismissal. Frey, Bellhart's shopkeeper, merely suggests to Hornet that she should empty her pockets and buy from his shop before she passes away, taking advantage of her condition to perhaps get one last transaction out of her. Pregnancy and raising a child are expensive journeys, and oftentimes rather than receiving actual assistance, women are often bombarded with expensive items and remedies that claim to ease one's burdens. Pain medication, baby books, parenting classes, new clothing to fit your growing body, expensive car seats, baby-proofing materials, dozens of trinkets that each claim to be the best for the development of one's baby. Marketers target pregnant people, as in their vulnerable state they are more likely to, or even forced to spend. The Bell Hermit views Hornet's pregnancy less as an affliction, but as some greater purpose that Hornet must undergo. Even when told that the baby will surely kill her should she carry to term, he affirms his beliefs that the parasite within her deserves a chance at life, even if it should cost her her own. This unfortunately is something a lot of people believe, that carrying a baby and having children is a woman's purpose, and that the health and well-being of the fetus should be prioritized over that of the carrier. A lot of anti-abortion rhetoric is founded upon the idea that a fetus is a valid life, that it has as much of a right to a life as anyone else, and that aborting the fetus is akin to murder. However, within these arguments, the carrier of the fetus is almost entirely ignored and denied their personhood. In several countries, such as the United States, Brazil, Poland, El Salvador, and the Philippines, along with others, terminating a pregnancy is criminalized, illegal, or heavily restricted. Women's rights to reproductive health are often stripped from them by men in power to control their bodies and prioritize the lives of unborn, often unsentient fetuses. And to add my own personal views to this otherwise sort of academic essay, I don't believe sentience should matter in this instance. I believe that no one should be forced to compromise their bodily or mental integrity to sustain another potential life. But in many places, people do not have the right to terminate their own pregnancies. And when people do not have access to safe, legal medical care, they are often forced to take drastic and potentially dangerous measures. When NPCs are not dismissing Hornet or actively being antagonistic towards her, they offer one piece of guidance in regards to ridding herself of her ailment: Yarnaby, a disgraced physician. Yarnaby was once the physician of Bellheart, but was kicked out due to her methods being deemed callous and crude. Funny, considering that within the oh-so-illustrious Citadel, the medical practices of the White Ward Medical Facility involved forcefully injecting bugs with silk in order to artificially prolong their lives, eventually leading to the haunting that plagues Farloom. Compared to the doctors of the Citadel, Yarnaby's practice seems rather tame, healing bugs by removing infestations within their shells. Perhaps if Yarnaby was recognized for her medical achievements and her research was further explored, Hornet wouldn't have to resort to such drastic measures in order to remove the parasite from within her. Or maybe the physicians of Farloom could have learned a means to extract the threads that bind them to grandmother's silk, and prevented the haunting entirely. Instead, because Yarnaby's practice had resulted in a few lives lost and was deemed taboo, she is forced to conduct her work in the far recesses of Greymoor, and without proper support must utilize archaic and dangerous tools. And so, Hornet is forced to take the risk in order to rid herself of the parasite within her. Her only option is sketchy back-alley abortion that could risk her health even further. Because when women's reproductive health care is stigmatized and made illegal, it doesn't prevent people from getting abortions. It prevents people from accessing safe abortions, and forces those in vulnerable positions to take unsafe and drastic procedures. Without any other options or methods of extraction, Hornet must undergo a painful surgery using Yarnaby's extricator, a machine that requires rusty, painful, makeshift steel spines which Hornet must pay for out of pocket, like everything in this game. Unfortunately, this mirrors reality quite closely. When performed legally and safely, abortion is often an easy and unobtrusive process. However, unsafe abortion performed by unlicensed backdoor doctors with less than ideal tools can lead to painful complications. According to a study done by Guttmacher Institute in 2012, over 6.9 million women had received treatment due to complications from unsafe abortion that year, and an estimated 40% of women who did have complications remained untreated. Much like Hornet having to pay for her own abortion, some might be forced to choose an unsafe abortion over a safe one due to cost, with abortions often ranging between $500 to $2,000 out of pocket without insurance. Furthermore, regardless of safety, surgical abortion often requires sharp metal instruments to be inserted into the body in order to extract the embryo or fetus, with only light sedation given to the patient compared to other invasive surgeries. Once they are acquired, a cutscene will play showing just how invasive and dangerous the procedure is. There are only a few moments within Silksong that get their own dedicated, fully animated cutscenes, namely important story beats. So what is Team Cherry saying by giving this small quest its own cutscene like this? By giving the operation its own animation, Team Cherry is drawing attention to it as a moment of importance within the story of Silksong's narrative, one where Hornet must go through trials and tribulations in order to reclaim her bodily autonomy. And once Hornet goes through this process and has the twisted bud removed from her shell, she comes out the other end all the stronger for it, claiming the bud's remaining power for herself in the form of the powerful witch crest, and regaining the ability to choose her own identity. So, what exactly does Silksong have to say about abortion? Through this questline, Team Cherry uses Hornet to explore the themes of unwanted pregnancy and its termination. The game never frames abortion as something bad or vilifies Hornet for undergoing such a procedure. Rather, it frames the circumstances surrounding Hornet's impregnation as something tragic and horrific, and the unsafe measures she has to take in order to get her abortion as a moral failing of society due to the criminalization of reproductive health, rather than any sort of moral failure on her part. On the contrary, Silksong argues that everyone should have the right to a safe abortion, and that it is sometimes necessary to terminate a pregnancy in order to maintain your health and identity. Hornet ultimately makes the choice as to what is best for her body, and comes out the other end stronger for it. Do I think Silksong is saying that all babies are parasites and that pregnancy is a curse? Not necessarily. In this specific instance, the burden of carrying a child is a physical and mental toll upon Hornet, one that constricts her from achieving her goals, and thus the baby within her is framed as a parasitic entity. However, Hornet is not the only character we encounter within Silksong who deals with pregnancy, and I'd like to end the video by quickly highlighting her encounter and what it has to say about the greater themes of motherhood within the game. Within the lower section of the Putrefied Ducts lies a small hovel that houses a very large bug. The Huntress, as she is called, is pregnant, and tasks Hornet to gather a variety of organs and meats for her unborn children to eventually feast upon, lest they gobble up their own mother instead. Should Hornet fail to succeed in this quest, or simply elect to ignore it, Huntress will later be found dead, having sacrificed her own body to feed her newborn brood, a fate that Hornet remarks is all too common for mothers within bug society. Hornet says such to Huntress herself, but the mother retorts that, is that shameful? A mother who would not sacrifice herself to see her children grow strong? Is it wrong to want, to witness their first flight, their first hunt, to see them kill and grow? Huntress does not wish to be rid of her children, and does not view the burden they place upon her body as something parasitic. Rather, she wishes to see her children grow, while also prioritizing her own health and needs. Unfortunately, like many mothers, she is in a vulnerable position, and needs additional help in order to sustain both herself and her kin. No action leads to her death, but by granting Huntress the support she needs in order to sustain both herself and her children, she needn't sacrifice herself, and can live on to see her children grow and thrive alongside her. Silksong, through both of its pregnancy plotlines, says that when we are able to give mothers the support they need, whether that be medically, nutritionally, financially, or emotionally, we give those mothers their identity, remove the need for them to make unnecessary sacrifices, and above all else, give them their freedom. In media, due to the taboo surrounding discussing sexual assault, I'm Sean Connery.